Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Board of Supervisors, Manager Hahn, and members of the public. My name is Lieutenant Steve Schaefer. I'm the acting chief presenting the Township's, the Police Department's 2026 proposed budget. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for members who are, of the public who are listening on live stream. On behalf of the Police Department, we just want to thank the community for your support of our officers as they protect and serve this community with professionalism, courage, and integrity. Many of you know the police department does consume half of the township's overall budget. We try to be very responsible with that. We're here 24/7, 365 days a year. And it's vital for public safety that we're well equipped, well trained, and that officers are compensated well. I'm extremely proud of these officers as they go about their day, putting themselves in harm's way. And it's very important that they have adequate staffing levels, that it's safe staffing levels, that they have modern crime fighting equipment, advanced training, and competitive salaries. So that being said, we do try to balance the needs of the police department with and align that with the township's overall budget and competing needs. We feel that this budget is financially responsible. We've looked at our spending, and I think that by the end of the presentation, you'll see that we're here to continue our operations in a way that works well with the township. Again, I'm not going to go through each line item. We are just going to look at the overall budget, and then I can answer any other questions that you might have. So just looking at the first slide, this is an overview of where we stand for 2026. We're going to talk about an increased health insurance issue. We're going to talk about an investment in a capital project, and then we're going to talk how we combat those increases with reductions in overtime wages and operational costs. The budget comes in right now at $9,140,938. That's an increase of $140,000, which is about 1.55%. Again, better than the 7.2% from last year, or from this year, and the 6.9% from 2024. So the key spending increases that we have this year, the first one is a line item called health and hospitalization. It covers our healthcare costs for both active employees and retirees. That has significantly gone up this year. If I look at the line items from admin, patrol, detectives, and traffic, it goes up about $361,000. So that is a big increase. It's not something that the police have much control over. That, of course, is insurance companies, the bargaining unit, and from the police side of things, that's what we're getting. Additionally, we have an operational increase, and when I talk about the operations part of the budget, what I mean is things like equipment, bullets, guns, chairs, computers, as well as licenses, software fees, things like that. Those are our operations. And we have three key areas where the budget is going up a little bit operationally. The first one would be in our camera system. So we have both body-worn cameras and in-car cameras. They are vital for our investigations. They're a great thing for officer accountability. We use them as evidence in court, and of course they do protect us against some civil liability. So this equipment is part of modern policing. Our body-worn cameras are about 2.5 years old. Our in-car cameras are about 4 years old. Body-worn cameras have about a 3 to 5 year shelf life, and in-car cameras about a 7. So they're about halfway through, and we're starting to see some repair costs, licensing fees, but repair costs are going up a little bit with that. So we're increasing that budget $25,000 to make sure that we can keep this equipment running until its end of life, which could be no later than 2028. We are looking into some grants for next year. Hopefully we can start mitigating some of those costs a while and looking at some other options. But for now, we need to at least plan for repairs for those items as they come up. The other increase that we're going to see is in ballistic vests. This is simply just an operational thing that comes up differently every year. Bulletproof vests, they have a 5-year shelf life as well. Contractually, we replace them every 5 years. So last year, we only had 5 officers that needed vests. This year, it's 8, so we're looking at a $6,000 increase in that. And then the last operational thing would be, we're asking for more of a capital purchase than we did last year, and we'll talk about that slide in a couple of minutes. So to get into an overview of how we're gonna combat some of those increases, we're gonna look at 2 things. We're gonna look at salaries and we're gonna look at overtime before we go into what we can do operationally. For salary, we're looking at an unrealized wage savings of about $114,000. What I mean by that is, if we go by 2025 and the amount of officers that we started with to continue our operations in 2025, and you take the collective bargaining units raise of 3.5%, that's about $178,000. We made some changes this year. We had an officer that left earlier in the year that we decided to do some restructuring and, different times, different schedules for some units, and we didn't replace him. So that saves a salary for next year. We're fine doing things the way we are with that. We have another officer who is going to be retiring in November. I've already worked on replacing him. But the way our pay scale works, it's a 7-step pay scale. We'll be able to hire a new officer at a much less expensive rate than that existing one. If we hire somebody who's in the academy, I can get a grant for him probably as well. So that would even be more savings. So those 2 things equal a decent amount of savings, as well as we have a part-time office staff that has probably gonna retire sometime around May, and it's my intention to not replace that position. We've been able to divide up some work and restructure some things there as well, and we'll see some savings in that area. So those 3 things mean our wages only go up $64,000 instead of $178,000. So when I say unrealized savings, what could have been is about $114,000 savings. We're gonna look at overtime the same way. Overtime's one of those words that, doesn't necessarily mean bad, right? We have operational things that have to be done, and some of that is done outside of regular work hours. Just to give you an example of what our overtime looks like, we put this graph up there. You can see from the top green portion, the majority of our overtime is court-related overtime. We want to catch bad guys and we want to slow people down to stop crashes. That means our officers are going to be busy. They have about 1,000 arrests a year and 7,000 tickets. They're going to be out there and it's going to incur some court time. So that is the largest portion of the overtime. What the graph doesn't show is in the revenue portion of things, that's basically a wash in fines and court costs. So the other large green portion is reimbursable overtime. That is things like, we might work a football game security, the school will pay us back. We might do a DUI checkpoint, we get funding for that. So that overtime is 100% reimbursable. So if you look at that, that's about half of our overtime is basically a wash. That just is a little explanation of how we manage overtime. And the other categories we look at on a year-by-year basis and try to determine our needs. Some of them we change on a yearly basis. A lot of them are something like an investigation, something comes up, we have a serious crime, officers have to put more time into it. Those kind of things we don't have control over, but they are consistently we can plan for them. So going back to how we're going to combat some of that savings, we dealt with the wages, we're talking about overtime now. If you look at the collective bargaining units, 3.5% raise, that would put overtime up to about $473,000 for 2025. What I did is I looked at the overtime and we found some ways that we could cut, and I took it back down to the 2025 number instead of raising it $473,000. That's about $16,000 that we saved in what would have been with the raises. It's cutting basically 195 hours of overtime by restructuring some things with some different officers that we have and some different ways that we can do things. So if I add those two together, that's about $130,000 that we tried to keep the budget down that would have gone up just due to the normal pay raises. All right, so the second way that we're gonna try to save some money is operationally. This is about $48,000 that we've looked at in the budget and been able to find some ways to save from 25 to 26. Uniforms and equipment, we're gonna use some of the things that we have a little bit longer as far as radios and batteries. We have one or two less officers so that we won't have to spend some of that uniform allowance as well. Firearm supplies, that's a category where we've eliminated some expenses by changing around some of the weapons that we use. And last year we budgeted for a few extra rifles. This year we're not going to do that. We're gonna put that off for another year possibly. We analyzed our fuel and we think that based on what we used year to date, we were a little high. Additionally, officers have been doing a really good job of keeping the cars from idling too much when they're not in them. That keeps the fuel costs down, as well as we have two less officers. The one that we will hire in November, he's gonna be in the FTO period doubled up, so we'll have some savings there as well. New hire testing should save about $5,000 because we just completed a test 2 weeks ago. I don't anticipate anybody leaving next year, but if they would, we could use this current test to fill that position. And then we found some other things in the EMA fire police budget that were earmarked that we don't use. And I found about $4,000 in additional controlled spending that we could cut, little minor things. So that leaves our savings of $48,000 operationally. If you looked at the key increases, that was $41,000. Savings are $48,000, so operationally we're actually about $6,700 less than last year. Let's goes into our capital purchase issue that we're going to talk about. 2028 is going to have some looming issues. We have LPR readers that we had been partially funded from the DA's office, their licenses. They're a great investigative tool. In fact, just last week, we had some theft from vehicles in the township. We used LPR readers to make an arrest on that almost within a day. So, great police work that the guys did. It's a good tool, but 2028, we're gonna have some license fees due. I talked about the body worn cameras and the in-car camera. That is also a 2028 issue. But the one that we're gonna try to plan for tonight is gonna be our in-car computers. Officers do everything on these computers. Of course, they get dispatched on them. That's how they write their reports, do their crashes, issue their tickets, look up criminal history. Everything's done on these computers. And it's mandated by the county that we replace them every, I believe, 5 years. 2028, they're due with a price tag of about $105,000. For 2025, we put away $50,000 capital purchase to begin tackling this problem. I'm gonna ask for that 50 plus another 10 so that we can at least say the most important thing, the computers are taken care of for 2028. That leaves us time to look at these grants and if they come in for 2026 and plan for some of those additional looming issues in 27 and 28. So we're asking for a total of $60,000 in capital purchases, which is $10,000 more than last year. All right, so this takes us to our review. Again, over time, we took that back down to 2025's hours, amount, so that's saving $16,000. Operationally, we decreased the operations budget $6,700. Wages, in light of the 3.5% raises, only actually went up $64,000. So overall, we kept the budget at $140,000 more than 2025. It's about a 1.55% increase. And that's pretty much the budget we have. I believe that we're gonna be able to continue our operations, continue giving the public the service that they deserve, and give the officers the tools that they need with this budget. And I just thank you for considering it. Questions?
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
I had questions, but as you went through your presentations, they got answered, so very well put together. I appreciate it. I believe Jack was writing down a few questions.
Yep,
So
of course. Lieutenant Schaefer, yeah. Only because I've heard from the community, it's not really, it may not be budget related depending on how it gets handled. School resource officer, okay, I hear comments back from the school, etc. I know you guys do patrols, but could you cover that? Is that included in the budget? Is there any plans for increased presence in the school system?
Well, as far as the school resource officer, that's something that has to be worked out between the school board's budget and the police budget. And I believe that our budgets are at different times of the year. So that would be something that we would have to get in line.
Yeah, they're on a different cycle.
Correct, with their budget, because there are ways that police departments and school districts split that cost, since the officer spends most of their time in the school. We would always be open to listening to that conversation. We do spend a lot of time patrolling the schools, keeping them safe, working with the schools. We have monthly meetings that we engage with them to share information. They have their own school, I don't want to butcher his title, but they have their own school mandated security personnel that has to work with their safety plans and coordinate with us different safety drills that we conduct with them on a monthly basis sometimes, but multiple times a year. So we're always engaging with them. This past summer, we heavily engaged with them with some training exercises where I brought in fire and EMS, and we did some very long, extensive training for active shooter stuff. So we did partner with them to do that. Our officers do go into school. We try to be there in the morning for drop-offs a lot. We help with traffic every day when school lets out. But as far as a specific school resource officer, that would have to be something that's worked out with the school district in line with their budget as well.
And that was probably not quite a good question, because I understand that the school board would have to allocate funds for that. It was more of our extra police presence in the school, and you've answered that. I appreciate it. I'm still a little puzzled on the 470,000. Okay,
Sure.
that you listed. Was that what you believe, where was it? It was the next slide, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, overtime, overtime by year. 2025, is that what you're projecting for 2025? Or is that what was in the budget?
That is what we budgeted for 2025.
Then you know what my next question is.
Why is it still
Where are
the
you
same?
at?
Oh, where am I at? I can get you that.
And if you don't have it handy, it's fine.
I do have, so that graph that we made
Yeah,
is, I have the numbers for that, but I put it in percentages, so I'd have to
Okay.
get you the exact number.
is it above or below?
It would be, oh, it's below that, we're below that.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and those numbers are figured in with overtime that hasn't occurred yet between what we anticipate reimbursable with the school yet, and a few of there's some last minute low light shooting that the officers have to do. So we'll be below what we anticipated most likely.
Okay, and then for 2026, you use the same number?
I did use the same number, so when we started working on the budget, finance gave me a number of $473,000 based on simply taking the raises that we would expect and applying the same percentages of overtime usage to 2026. That's when I looked at it and I said, let's take it down and just keep it the same dollar amount as 2025 to show no increase. And that's why I'm saying we saved about 16,000.
Okay. Your admin person, you're going to lose her part-time in next May, if I remember correctly?
I believe
Okay.
that's when she's.
And maybe I shouldn't be asking this because I'm not sure I wanna know the answer, but what are the plans then? What are your plans?
So that position has changed over the years. I've been here 28 years. We've had different part-time admin personnel. One full-time, one part-time, two full-time and a part-time. It's changed over the years, and part of the reason for that changing is technology, how we do things. So they don't file paper citations anymore. They don't do a lot of paper-related things anymore. And as we change, we lose work for that person to do. Additionally, some of the work that person does right now, we delegated because we were busy, and it's really stuff that we think a police officer should be doing anyway. So that's something that we would take back. And then dispatching as well, that's another, like a technological change. We no longer try to dispatch anything from our office. People sometimes, instead of calling 911, would call the office directly. We try to take that away because it's safer when it's done through Burke's radio. So even answering the phones is less. That's why I think that we'll be able to do without that position.
Okay, so it'll just be completely eliminated.
Most likely, yes. That's what we budgeted for. That budget's based on running those numbers of when we anticipate her to work this year.
Okay. Last question I have is, I don't see any capital improvements. You have no capital really listed other than what you just mentioned there. You're not asking for capital to start putting it away for that 2028 as an example for the mobile units.
Not other than the $60,000 for the MCT.
Right.
That is the capital purchase that we're asking for 2028, just for the computers.
Yeah, but that's not a fixed cost at this point?
That's
3 years.
It's most like, for the computers itself, that most likely will cover it based on the $50,000 that we put away in 2025. So if you approve the $60,000 in that category, we should have enough for the MCTs.
Okay, all right, good, okay. But when I don't see capital, I start thinking, uh-oh.
Sure.
All of a sudden, we're gonna get hit with a possible capital request that was not planned, or maybe you knew about and didn't let us know.
We'll be back knocking next year for the other thing.
Okay, good. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Sure.
That's it for me.
Supervisor Kutcher?
No, I understand.
Supervisor Kamara?
It's part of the presentation and questions.
Supervisor Ham?
I don't think at this time.
Just a couple of things for me. You've mentioned the operational increase on the body-worn cameras and the bulletproof vests. There are grants that are being pursued. Do you know when you could hear about it?
So the bulletproof vest grant is usually a sure thing. That's
Okay.
something that we go through every year. But it does have to happen after we submit
Purchase
the
it,
vest
yep.
and go through a process. As far as the grant for the cameras, I believe that the earliest we could hear from that is March.
Yeah. So they're, in theory, they could be net zero as far as.
It could be.
The other thing, it's an ask, it's not a comment or anything. I would like you to look at the overtime by year, work with Bill, and see how we could improve. Other than that, if there's nobody else having any other questions, I
Very good.
appreciate you and I appreciate your presentation. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you.
thank you, that's well done.
All right, we're switching, just force it.
Oh.
That will be the third, that's what I thought.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. See you.
Just click this in.
I have it up on the screen, Jack.
No problem. That would be, $25 for the rest.
Good to go?
Good to go, sir.
Okay. Chris Jordan, Fire Chief, Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department. First of all, thank you for allowing us to present the 2026 budget this evening. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors, also the residents for your support over the last year and in previous years. We're very proud of what we accomplished in this past year, and we're still accomplishing more. And I'm personally very proud of all of our crew and all the accomplishments that they've had over the last year. Just to name a few, in 2025, we placed Tower Ladder 25 in service. So you'll see that on the street, and great asset to the community. We also had 6 new members achieve their Essentials of Firefighting training this year. That's a 200-hour training class, and they'll all be testing for their Firefighter 1 certification in the beginning part of November. So, you know, most fire departments or fire companies in the county might have 1 or 2, so we're very proud that we have, 6 that went through the class and actually started and finished the entire class. Quite an accomplishment for those members. I'm also proud to say that over the past year, we've expanded our junior firefighter program, which is members ages 14 to 17 years of age. We made a push on that to help replenishing that program. We've gone from 6 members at this time last year to now we have 12. So that's a great accomplishment to, the school district's been helping us, but also to our crew for helping with those recruitment efforts. So thank you again. Before we get into the numbers, I just wanted to reiterate the priorities of the department. The first priority is to continue to provide 24/7, 365 days a year in-house staffing. One of the things that our fire department does is we have in-house staffing 24/7, 365. That's done through our career staff, but also our volunteers that we incentivize to staff our fire station. The second priority is the centrally located Emergency Services Center, which we've talked at length about. Third priority is to continue to solidify our apparatus replacement plan, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Fourth priority is to continue to enhance community relations with local businesses and community organizations. Over the years, we've had great relationships with the local businesses, and also many community organizations that we continue to support, and they support us through various events during the year. And then last but not least, we want to continue to enhance our recruitment and training efforts. One of the things that I wanted to do when I took over as fire chief is to continue to make sure that our members that we have in place are being productive and retain them, but also to make sure that we're recruiting new recruits and also training them properly. The next Essentials class will start sometime in January or February, and I'm hoping to get another 6 enrolled in that class so that at this time next year I can tell you we have another 6 firefighters on the street. So that's the goal. Some historical call volume. Sorry, on the wrong page. So a lot of the community may not know who we are. We're Exeter Township Volunteer Fire Department, but we're a combination fire department. Currently, we're staffed by volunteers. We do have full-time staff, and we do have part-time personnel. So right now, we have 75 active volunteers. That would include the junior members and also the fire police members. We have 2 full-time firefighters that cover our daytime operations. And then we have 20 part-time firefighters that fill 5 positions during the daytime hours. In the past, the firefighters would work at the local hardware store, leave to go fight a fire or protect the community. Those days are long gone. So what we're doing is maintaining a combination department where it's a combination of volunteers and career staff, to help protect the community. And we provide all disciplines of the fire service, fire suppression, truck and aerial work, rescue. We fight brush fires. We have tankers for the rural end of the township. We also have fire police. We have QRS and EMS, which helps support the Lifeline EMS program. And then we also have water rescue. And once again, the goal is to continue to maintain that 24/7, 365 program. From a call volume perspective, in 2023, we responded to 1,468 emergency responses. About 80 of those were from the flooding in July, which we've talked about. Last year, we were at 1,401, and this year, we're at 1,200 at the end of September. So that would put us right around 1,550 calls for the year, which obviously is about a 10% increase from last year. Some stats from last year, 20% of our calls were overlapped, meaning that when you're out on a call, we may get another call during that time, which again, we try to maintain at least 2 crews in place that they can respond to that. 77% of those calls were fire and rescue calls, and then 23% were QRS and EMS calls. 78% of our responses were to Exeter Township and St. Lawrence Borough, which would be our first 2 area. And our average dispatch to response time is 1 minute and 5 seconds. Right, Larry. Okay, on to the budget. The current fire tax is at, I'm gonna say 1.07 mils. That's what the current fire tax is. At this point in time, we're not requesting a tax increase for the 2026 operational budget. So the operational budget encompasses pretty much everything we need to operate. Vehicle and personal insurances, fuel for emergency vehicles, workman's comp, things of that nature. The fire tax generates approximately $1.4 million in the course of a year. And on the expense line, if you go down to the bottom, you can see that the line items are pretty close to where they were last year. A few call-outs, as Lieutenant Schaefer mentioned, we're seeing increases in insurance costs as well. So workman's comp, we're projecting to be around $75,000 for next year. Under line for fire, or contributions in fire, that line item is for our career staff and our part-timers. That also includes the health insurance of the 2 full-timers. Right now, we're anticipating from 2025 to 2026, that should be about a 20% increase over last year. A few factors play into that. Number 1, the overall health insurance has gone up, but number 2, one of our full-timers resigned and we got a new full-timer, and his health insurance was a little bit higher than the old one we had. So that's part of the increase. Another note, if you go to the bottom, Supervisor Pio mentioned about capital purchases. So that last line item, transfer to apparatus, that's our capital program for apparatus replacement. So we took that from $235,000 a year, we increased that to $250,000 a year. We're in the process currently of looking at, replacing one of our apparatus based on our apparatus replacement program. And that apparatus is projected to come in somewhere between $1.3 and $1.5 million. If you haven't followed with the federal government, the cost of fire apparatus has skyrocketed over the last few years, to the point where I believe it's Senator Hawley is very vocal with the federal government to try to stop the increases of the fire apparatus and try to actually bring them down and get the fire apparatus manufacturers more in line with where they should be. The apparatus that we're looking at replacing, at the current rate, it would take us about 6 years to accrue the funds to replace that apparatus without taking a loan or coming to the board with a big ask. So hopefully, the price of apparatus will start to relax and come down a little bit, but we're not sure. So we are looking at alternatives. You know, there's something called a refurbishment, where you could look at refurbishing a current apparatus and bringing it more up to speed. You know, you could also go a used apparatus route, which are things we're all looking at. But, you know, in the past, the apparatus that's being replaced has been used as a reserve piece in case one of our apparatus goes down for mechanical issues or some other major issues. Any questions before we go on from that slide? My answer part.
So your delta is $4,500. Is that the difference that you're seeking pretty much this year, or you're just gonna cover it in-house?
So that's actually, we're not asking for any
Okay.
more funding. So the delta where it shows 4,500, I believe that's what they're planning that we would earn in the revenue line this year versus last year. It's from interest and
Yeah, fair enough.
other things. But yes, if in the operational side, I think it's 1,433,000 versus 1,432,000. That would be covered with internal.
Got it.
Some budget notes. So everything in here in the budget is all of our anticipated expenses related to vehicle and personnel insurance, fuel, 9/11 communications payment, which, you know, currently, and Manager Heim, you might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're also paying for the EMS communications fee out of this.
I don't know that.
Something we may wanna look into, but I believe it's EMS and fire, the communications fees are coming out of that. I believe so. We might wanna we'll look at that together. Workman's compensation insurance, which we talked about, apparatus maintenance, and also the payroll and benefits for the full-time personnel, and then the payroll for the part-time personnel, the volunteer incentive program, and also the apparatus replacement program. And just to reiterate, for the operational side of the fire department, we are not asking for a tax increase this fiscal year of 2026.
10 out of 10. Thank
Any
you.
questions?
Just wondering, why did you drop the fire vehicle maintenance, 25,000 from your operation?
So last year, we knew we were gonna have some pretty significant maintenance costs. You know, one of our apparatus, I believe, had to have some engine work done. This year, we're not anticipating that. Knock on wood, hopefully none of that happens. So hopefully the maintenance can come down. And it's reallocated into the, what would be the contributions fire, which is the salary and benefits and things like that, to cover those increases.
Fair enough. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody has questions for?
Yeah, I'm not sure. St. Lawrence, what are they paying you, the fire what do they pay us? The
Yeah, so
fire
right now, St. Lawrence's fire tax is at, I believe it's at 0.67 mils. And that money is split between Exeter and also Mount Penn Fire Company. So that generates, I believe it generates approximately $12,000 per year per fire department.
That's it?
Do we anticipating an increase? I mean, that's
Yeah, so I've worked with the chief at Mount Penn.
basically free.
And we put together, well, we could talk about St. Lawrence offline, but, so we put together a plan where, there's increases every year in the fire tax. And it's basically contracted services with them. But good question. They do contribute, but it's, I mean, dollar-wise, it's
It's
small.
not making it.
Minimal. Any other questions for the chief here, or the rest of the board?
I have none.
Thank you.
He already answered about capital equipment. Thank you, chief.
Thank you, chief, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Alright, I don't know if anybody signed up for public comments, I don't see anything written on the sheets, so we're gonna move on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the budget workshop?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second